My name is Bill Shimmers. Some of you may recognize the name. I had posters all over the place for the latter part of last year. I ran for Clinton City Council, and I did. Excuse me, I did win. I am a council at large. And I say that because it does play an important role. Prior to that, I moved out here from Phoenix, Arizona, and they did mention on this movie, Phoenix, Arizona. I spent 26 years in law enforcement. I retired as a sworn U.S. Marshal and a lieutenant with the Phoenix Police Department. And that vice unit from Las Vegas, I worked with closely. This is the first time I saw that movie, and I will tell you what, it hit home to me because everything you saw in there I had seen for almost 7 years working the streets of Phoenix. And we became U.S. Marshals in Phoenix because we went around the country going after our pimps. And why was that important? It was important to us, and I get angry now seeing this all over again, and you could probably sense the anger in the police officers as well. I worked long and hard hours for the first year, realizing I wasn't getting anywhere in the city of Phoenix. We weren't making a dent in this human trafficking. And a key about human trafficking, it's slavery. Think about that, it's slavery. There are marches today from slavery that happened decades and centuries ago, but no one is marching about the slavery today. And so I have to thank the Franciscan Peace Center, the people that work for it, and Clinton Community College for opening this up for discussion and bringing this, because the key element to preventing this from happening is the fact of educating our community. So in a nutshell, and I don't want to take a lot of time, I could tell some war stories left and right. And I mentioned the political aspect of it. It took me about a year trying to figure out how am I going to wake up my neighborhood, how am I going to wake up the areas that we patrolled, that I patrolled, that I spent 23 years working. And I hit on a nerve one time. I called up the media, and the media came out and they filmed my undercover. I had a luxury back then. I had close to 40 detectives working undercover, and we did wiretaps. Everything you saw here, wiretaps. I had SWAT teams serving search warrants. But when I had a dog crate taken off of a second-story apartment, and I pointed to that and said, that's where that girl has been living for the last 2 months. That shook the valley. And it shook it really hard that it hurt a few politicians, and I was called into offices the next day. But a politician, a city councilwoman, and I will tell you her name to this day, Peggy Bilstein, stopped me on my walk down the hallway. And she said, where are you going? And I told her, and she says, tell me what happened. I saw it on the TV last night. And I told her the story. She says, I'm going to go with you. And she went in, and she helped me tell the story. The difference was that she was a politician. And she saved the law enforcement officers from backing off, and I'm saying backing off doing that kind of work. Money plays an important role. Money plays an important role to make this crime happen, but also plays an important role on trying to get these crimes to stop. And even to this day, I had the luxury of having 40 detectives, and I believe they're down to 12. So it's a shame that that is where we're at, but I will tell you right now, the key element to helping is educating and bringing this to the public knowledge. And I've been working or helping with Lori in the Peace Center for a couple of years now, and I hope to continue doing that. But I will tell you, it's not a law enforcement problem. It's not a cop's problem. And I will tell you from my own personal experience, it leaves a lot of scars. It leaves a lot of scars on the victims. It leaves a lot of scars on the law enforcement officers, but it does leave scars on the community. But the most important part, it's not a law enforcement problem. It's an entire society's problem. It takes everyone sitting out here the knowledge and the courage to call when you see something. And I hate to steal a phrase from federal government, but they use it all the time, so I'm going to use it here. If you see something, say something. And even in Clinton, I would have to say, if you see something, say something. We're going to do some question and answers here in a little bit, so I don't want to take up too much time. I'm going to pass this down, and when we get to the end, I want to introduce our last guest down there as well. And I don't think I need to introduce this guy too much. He's probably better known than anybody, but I'm going to let him do it.
First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I'm pleasantly surprised that we had such a great turnout. I'm hoping that when you leave here tonight, everybody walks away with kind of like what Bill talked about, at least some more knowledge of what you came with, and if you see something, say something. As a police department, I'm happy to report that we don't have, we're not the size of Phoenix, we're not as big as Chicago, New York, or LA, but again, this problem is across the country, it's across the nation. And it might be on a smaller scale, but we certainly don't want it to get out here any worse than it is and jeopardize or risk anybody in our community, young, old, women, children, boys, any of that. So to have everybody turn out tonight and walk away with some sort of education from this, being aware of something and reporting things anytime that you see it would be great. Real quick, so I know we got to continue these. My name is Bill Greenwalt. I'm a captain with the Clinton Police Department. I've been there for 27 years. I've worked everything from a canine handler to patrol to undercover narcotics for 4 years to street crimes to back in the patrol division. So.
Hi, my name is Kelly Saul. I'm the outreach advocate with Breaking Traffic. Breaking Traffic is a part of Family Resources, and we are located in Davenport. However, we do serve Clinton County as well. And what we do is we provide direct services to survivors of human trafficking. And that could be survivors of sex trafficking or survivors of labor trafficking. And we also provide presentations, education, awareness, and professional trainings for pretty much anybody who asks for a training. We are happy to go ahead and do that training. So whether it's a small group or a large group, professionals, we really don't care. We just want to get the word out and let everybody know that what human trafficking is, what they can do about it, and then also that we exist to assist those individuals who have dealt with human trafficking, have been in that situation. Whether it's currently in that situation or this happened 40 years ago, we are still there to assist those people.
Steal that from me real quick. I'm gonna introduce our last guest here, and I have to tell you, I have to commend her for being up here with us today. In my time in law enforcement, I had over 2,000 cases come across my desk on traffic victims. And every time I look in the eyes of a traffic victim, I saw the same thing I saw here tonight. Our guest to my far left is a trafficking victim. But unlike what we saw up here, and sex trafficking is big, but the one area of being victimized that isn't talked about much is labor trafficking. To my far left is and I hope I don't mess up your name, Florentia Willemsen?
Florentia.
Okay, Florentia Willemsen. She is a traffic survivor. She came to the United States from the Netherlands in 2011. She and her 2 children were labor trafficked for about 2 years before they were rescued. Think about that, her 2 children. She came here to share the details with us tonight, and I hope that you guys really take to heart what she says. Her and I had an opportunity to talk before the meeting, and you can still see the pain, and I hope you can respect what she has to say and really take something away from what she's got to say to us tonight.
Hello, everybody. It's not easy to explain everything, but like a lot of young girls get contacts with people on internet. That's how we got friends from the internet. They said they were friends. They asked us to come to America to get some get away from all the mess what we were having in our own country. And for the first few weeks, everything went good. And then they started forcing us to clean the house and everything. We ended first up in Florida, and that lady, she left us and made us pay for hotels and everything. And then we ran out of money, so I knew another friend living in Oklahoma, and she asked us to come over, and she was even worse. She let the kids go to school and everything and make friends, but when they came home, they had to clean the house with me, and if we didn't, we got tortured by saying, mentally tortured by saying, if we didn't do it, they'll call the police and they'll call the immigration to get us kicked out or get us locked up or whatever, so we had to do it. My children was 11 and 12. They were told to go outside and cut weed with the scissors from the horse and the horse field and everything. And it kept going on for 2 years like that until her son came and saw what was happening. She had all our papers and everything, and every time we didn't do anything, she said, I'm going to call the immigration office and call the police. Kicked us out every time. In the beginning, we all had a bedroom of our own, and then at the end, we all slept in one little room with 2 beds, and we couldn't even walk in that bedroom. All our clothes were stolen, all our jewelry, laptops, everything. Called the police. They were saying that my daughter wanted to kill her with a knife, and it wasn't true because she wouldn't do laundry or anything. Police came and said she's been caught doing that plenty of times to people, but they couldn't do anything because we were from a different country, had no papers, no nothing anymore. And the son came and saw what was happening, came and got the children, made sure they could have some fun, but couldn't happen because my son got sick. Had to rush him to the hospital with appendicitis. So he got that taken out, and then he had 3 surgeries on his private parts. He's been sick ever since, always having troubles, can't go to the hospital, got no money. Then they brought us to the Victory Center here in Clinton after my son was a bit better. And ever since we've been trying to struggle and get jobs and everything and trying to become citizens, but we can't get no help anywhere. Until we came to Rabbit Ria Housing, they've been trying to do everything for us. And nobody just wants to help. We've been asking for beds and everything, nothing. They all say, well, you're uncitizens, so why should we help? You're here illegal. And everything what Rabbit Ria Housing has been trying to do, first they say yes, and then all of a sudden it's no, we can't help you. My daughter is from everything was going on, ended up in Bridgeview now. My son, he's too scared to go to school, he's too scared to meet people. The only thing he does is work at Hy-Vee at the Starbucks, and then he comes home, locks himself up. He won't get out, nothing. I just don't know what to do anymore. Been trying to get visas to stay here and proper jobs, but there's nobody that wants to help.
We're gonna talk a little more in depth about her scenario, and I think one of the key elements that she hit on earlier, and I've seen it, you come over here from another country, you want a better life. Is that what America's all about? But you get hooked up with the trafficker, and they take your papers, just like she said. They take your papers. Then they take your jewelry.
Yep.
And then it's a process. Before you know it, you can't get out of that process, and it's tough. And I will tell you, in the area that I work, they call it turning out the girls. I've seen victims on the average, and Kelly's going to probably touch on this here in a little bit, and I don't think the averages have changed much. In that time, it was 13 years of age. I saw them as young as 11 years of age. It's tough to get out of that system because the traffickers are there to make the money off of you. They're there to make the money. It's about the money. With that, I know we had some questions. And I'll please jump in anytime.
Does anyone else have questions? Cards? I'll come around there. Raise your hand if you do.
I'm gonna let you help me out on this as well, but this is kind of a two-part question. How does pimping start? How do we go from black slavery to black pimps? Black isn't the topic. I've seen white, I've seen Hispanic pimps. the color of skin is not the issue. It's about the money. So if we want to talk color, let's talk green. It's about the greenback. It's about the money. One of the most prolific pimps that we dealt with, that we did a 45-day wiretap on. We were talking up on the show, was talking about his name, when was it Jello, I believe it was. Ours was called the mayor. The mayor of Arizona. Think about that for a minute. The mayor of Arizona. Well, that tells you about his education, first of all. But it took a 45-day wiretap to get him in prison, where he's still at today. And in that time that we were wiretapping him, he had trafficked roughly 7 girls that we knew of in and out of Arizona. So black really isn't an issue. It's green that's the issue. And quite frankly, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the legislative side, and it was talked about on this movie. When myself and our council person went down to the state senate to get some laws changed to help victims, one of the biggest things that came up is when we wanted to go after the Johns. That was a dirty word. You're going after the men? Yeah, we're going to go after the men. And that was tough, because we had men in the state legislature that fought back against that. You pick out the reason why. I can't answer that. But anyways, pimping. If you think about today's society in general, look at MTV. It glorifies pimping. It talks about the great shoes, the great socks, the great bling. Think about some of the other shows that are on TV, and one of them escapes my mind right now, my pregnant teen or whatever it is. It's glorifying stuff that shouldn't, in my opinion, be glorified. So how do we go from one arena to another? I think if we just turn on certain channels on the TV, that'll tell you some of the answers.
And again, I want to agree with him that the color of a pimp is not necessarily one color. It is the color green. It is all about the money. And I also want to point out that pimps can be women. Pimps can be family members.
That's right.
I don't want people to think that the only pimp is one guy from Chicago. That is absolutely not the case. And how it starts is basically with greed. People are looking for money, and this is an easy way to make money. It's easy for pimps to make money. It's hard, as they said in the movie, for law enforcement to carry a prosecution all the way through. The risk is really small. Like that one pimp said, if he ran drugs, he'd be behind bars, but he doesn't run drugs, he runs people. It's not illegal to have people with you if the cops happen to stop and talk to you. So the pimping, that starts with greed. That's all it really is we want money, and we're gonna find a way to make that money happen.
And just to add to that, it is primarily about the money, but some of the cases that we've run into, it may be about drugs, and I think I alluded to that inside in the movie, is we've seen and personally witnessed family members that have used other family members to sell sex and support their drug habit. Again, it's about money, but it's also about drugs, and this crime knows no race, no color. It affects everybody. And again, even though that show was very, very good, there was a lot of talk about larger scale sex trafficking, the pimps that had multiple girls. Even though that is huge across the country, it's just as bad for smaller communities to have one person and one child, or smaller organizations. Not everywhere across the country do we see these pimps and the people in the sex trade in large groups like that. So in our communities and the smaller communities across the country, don't think that everything is that big and that noticeable. It's a lot of times it's on a lot smaller scale. And we've got to be keenly aware of what's going on in our communities.
And I also have to say, they touched on going after and finding girls at malls. There is no socioeconomic class that is not immune from it. I've seen girls taken from very expensive homes in Scottsdale to some of the worst areas in the valley. And even picture this, because I don't think they have schools like this out here, but in some of the worst neighborhoods in Arizona, they have what they call a closed campus. Kids get there by a certain time, they lock up the gates. Your kids are safe inside, and then school's out, they unlock the gates and everybody goes home. We even had a case where 7 girls were recruited on the inside of that campus by 2 other girls who were helping the pimp. So, and that was primarily Hispanic neighborhood. So again, their color has no color. Next question, how do we check our kids' phones? I might want to hand this over to my wife, because she does our son all the time. You know how you check it? You turn it on and open it up and look at it. That's how you do it. I have to tell you, I remember doing a search warrant on a young man's, on his family's house. The young man, he was a teenager, was the suspect. But we went in the house, and one of the things that we were told by the parents is, well, we don't ever go in his bedroom. So on the back of his door was a lot of pictures and a lot of graphs of what he did, because he knew his parents were going to come in there. So you know what we did during that search warrant to make his parents look at his room all the time? We took that door with us as evidence, so there was no door in that room, and that parents had to look at that door every day this kid was in custody. So I'm not going to get too much into legalities, because I know some things may have changed, but yeah, I guess my wife would say take a look at it. And by the way, she's retired law enforcement too, so I'll have to go with her legal opinion.
That's a great question. I just sat on a panel here not too long ago where we were talking about drug overdoses and children using drugs. And one of the questions, the same question came up, is how do we check our children's phones? And I will tell you, children's phones contain everything. It's who they talk to, who's trying to talk to them, what they do every day, what they're planning to do the next day, the next week. Everything they do is spelled out on that phone, and we call it a phone. It's a personal recorder of their lives. And I think when we talk kids, children under 18, you're entitled to check that phone at any time. I have 2 daughters, one's 18 and one's 13, and I think they probably think I have chips planted in, so I know every move they make. They always say, I think my dad knows every place I go. I really don't, but don't anybody tell them if you know them. But every day, you know, my wife and I both, we make sure that we know our daughter's passwords. We know that where those phones are at, and I will personally say to my daughter, let me see your phone, and I look at it. I will tell you, it is a tough task, and some of the technology, well, I have to give credit to my wife too, because some of the programs out there, I like to think I'm technologically savvy, and sometimes I have to ask my children to activate things. But what I'm telling you is, don't let it get so far away from you that you don't know what programs are running on your phone, that you don't know how to access them. And I would encourage children live their lives on phones. Almost anything you want to know about your children that they won't tell you is somewhere on that phone, in a text message, a Snapchat, which I just finally figured out how to do, Facebook, all the information that you want on your children, and you need to take the time to look at that. And tell them up front when you give them the phone. You know, nowadays children are getting phones earlier. Take that time to tell them, yes, you may be getting a phone at this age, but mom, dad, we are going to keep track of what occurs on that phone, whether it's daily, weekly, and do it. Don't just say it, because I'm telling you, if you don't take the time to look to see what's on that phone, the day that you do, if it's 6 months, a year, 2 years, or later you ask somebody, you're going to be shocked at what's on that phone. And a lot of things can be prevented by just taking that few extra minutes to look at your child's phone. You're not asking them to break their trust. You're not trying to snoop on them. Be upfront with them. Let them know for their safety and for their, really for primarily for their safety, you're going to check that phone frequently. And I think that'll keep kids, they won't be trying to hide things from you, and you'll be ahead of the curve and keeping your kids safe.
I got nothing to add. You got it.
Well, this next question is interesting, and you're going to have to help me on this one.
I'll try.
It's an interesting question, and it's kind of a two-part one as well. Would legalizing prostitution have any advantages to these girls? Well, if your girl wants to be beat up, sexually used a couple dozen times a night, I would say yes, but I can guarantee you that answer is no. That's my opinion. There are no advantages of it. I will tell you, this was kind of new news to me when the officer in the movie said that the mayor was contemplating having Vegas itself so they could regulate it. Again, it goes back to the money and the greed. So I don't have a positive answer for that. There's another part to this question, but I don't know if you guys would like to touch on this before I go to the second part.
Well, I think one thing that I would add is, by legalizing that, I think people are thinking, is the money going to be, is what's paid going to be taxed? But think about looking at these girls in this video and what they've resorted to. Do you think they go out and people say, they don't go out and ask for that, they're not looking for that. You may hear somebody say, you know, I'm making money doing this, but they also, the results are, there's mental health issues that become prevalent. And I'm going to guess, and I don't have the statistics, and I'm sure you've seen a lot more of it, and probably in the interviews that you've done, I'm going to guess 98 to 99% of all people in this industry end up resorting to controlled substances or alcohol abuse because they're not out there doing it for the money. They're not hoping that that's the livelihood that they have for the rest of their life, and they retire on that. Their lives end up getting turned upside down. Might sound okay legalizing it from thinking they're going to make money, but I think that officer in that story today said that there's nothing good that's going to come out of that. I've yet to meet anybody that hasn't had some sort of substance abuse problem as a direct result of what they've been subjected to.
And I would agree with that there is absolutely no benefit to legalizing prostitution. And certainly, just like they said, you know, people come out of this exceptionally traumatized, extremely scarred, and with so much healing to do. And yes, sometimes people say, yeah, I chose that lifestyle, but did you really? What happened before you chose that life? What happened to that person? There is not a young girl or a young boy out there who says, you know what, one day I want to grow up and I want to be a prostitute. I want to help, you know, sell my body to people so they can abuse the crap out of me. Nobody says that. No young child says that. No teenager says that. Something else happened, and these people are being exploited. They didn't choose it. They're being exploited, even if in their mind they thought they made a choice. Somebody tricked them into doing that. So no, there is absolutely no benefit to people legalizing that, except to the pimps. They're loving it. They were like, sweet, we can get all kinds of money. I don't think we should allow that or enable that.
This one will probably come back to you as well. This is, you actually touched on one of the key words here. This is the second part of that. No need to, there is no need to trick the girls if they didn't want to be in the profession. I will tell you, and I'll tell you a term that wasn't used in there, and I ran it across a lot, and they're called guerrilla pimps. The guerrilla pimps are the ones that usually go out with the recruiters. They trick the girl into the car, and they do trick the girl. I will tell you, and I hate saying girls because there are guys that get tricked into it as well. But when you go up to a 13, 14, especially 13, you know, a young teenager, let's say a young teenager. Young teenagers like to drive fancy cars, they like the nice clothes, they like the nice jewelry, and when they see somebody approaching them saying, hey, we can get you the same thing we have on, and you can be just like us, follow us and we'll make you a movie star, we'll make you a model, we'll make you want to see the Kardashian, you want to be like a Kardashian up here on the wall with all the fancy clothes and stuff. They get in that car, and again, like I said earlier, it took 8 hours to put that girl on the street to get money because her life was threatened, her family's life was threatened, anything that she knew about in the past was threatened. And I'll tell you, one of the worst things I've ever seen is also, and it did touch on this, girls being branded. When you're taking a hot clothes hanger and they make an insignia on it and they stick it in a fire and then they stick it in your back, just like you were cattle. That isn't wanting to be in the profession. That's being forced into stuff that you never ever want to be part of. And it does, you can't get away from those scars. And those type of scars actually stay the rest of their life. I'm going to let you tap into that a little bit more because that's, or either one of you actually.
I guess to that I say, if I wanted to clean the kitchen, I would go clean the kitchen. But if you have to pay me $20 to clean the kitchen, I didn't really want to clean that kitchen, did I? So if you have to pay somebody to have sex with you, they didn't really want to have sex with you, did they? So these people are not choosing this, they are tricked into this. And again, even if somebody says, yeah, I wanted to do that, we need to look deeper into their story. What happened before they said, yeah, I wanted to be a part of that? What made them vulnerable? And that is exactly what the pimp and the trafficker is going to exploit, is whatever they find that made that person vulnerable. Whether that person was looking for attention, or that person was looking for money, or that person was looking for food to eat because they happened to be a runaway on the street and they didn't have anywhere to go, that's what those traffickers are going to use. So you could call it tricked, you could call it coerced, you could call it forced. Either way, people are not voluntarily setting up shop saying, this is what I want to do. Somebody else is controlling them.
The next question is more of a legal question, so I will have to defer to my friend here on the left. But I got a real quick answer for this one too. What are the legal ramifications if we were to pepper spray someone trying to advance on our child or ourselves? I think that detective up there said if somebody tried to do that to his daughter, he'd have a little stronger response, and that would be my response. But I'll let the legal expert here say that one.
I'm not sure about a legal expert, but I do know some of the rules and the laws in the state here that govern that. As a police officer, we can only use as much force as necessary to effect an arrest, and anything beyond that is excessive. These are really, really tough questions. I get, I meet with a lot of people throughout the community, and they say, well, what if somebody comes in my yard and I don't want them there? How much force can I use? And I like what I've succeeded in my career with, it's called the reasonable test. It's very simple. I always say to myself, what would 12 jurors that know nothing about my job think about what I'm about to do? Would they find it reasonable? And this is a really tough question. If you could articulate, and police officers are presented with this every day of their life. Some days aren't quite as bad as others, but we're forced to make fast decisions, and we try to make the right decisions. If somebody's walking by you and you didn't like the fact that they walked by you and you grabbed your pepper spray and just felt that they were getting too close to you, that's probably not going to be acceptable. You're probably crossing the lines into an assault. If you feel that you could testify in a court of law that you felt that this person had the intent or was about to harm you, and you could articulate it and feel that 12 people that knew nothing about your case that you were going to explain it to would find it reasonable, you just have, it's a tough question. There's no, there's not a 1, 2, and 3 that I can read to you. There's some of the key words are intent. As police officers, we have to determine, did somebody have the intent? Did they do an act? And it's a real, and I know, because I get asked this a lot, I felt very uncomfortable. This person was, right behind me, or, he ran into me, bumped into me a couple of times in the store. And so what I would say is, again, I'm not encouraging everybody to go out and buy pepper spray and spray people. If you can articulate that your life or your safety was in jeopardy and somebody was about to cause harm to you, and you could testify in a court of law of that, you're going to have to testify properly. And I know that's not the answer. Everybody's hoping that I say, oh yes, in this situation you can, but this one you can't, and everything else in between is wrong. It's a very tough question. You just have to be able to say that you were either being harmed, in immediate danger of being harmed, and know, as in police officers, if we make a mistake, and everything, for the most part, everything is videotaped in a lot of public areas and businesses, that it could be on video. So you got to be very careful with that, and I would be cautious. I would never jeopardize my safety by not doing something to protect myself or my family, but you just got to know when you can do it, and it's a tough one to answer. Any comments on that?
Let him handle that one.
The next question is kind of a Facebook question, so I'm going to kind of dance around that one, but I'll let you two kind of tap onto that one as well. If someone is following us in a store suspiciously, should we turn and take their picture, as someone on Facebook said? It never hurts to take a picture, but my first thing is I don't know that I want to spend the time taking the pictures. I would rather put myself in a safer position, first of all. I think that's first and foremost.
I'm going to stick straight to this question. If I'm in a store, I would say that the vast majority of your public stores, whether it's small business or large business, tend to have security cameras. There's a push in society for more and more video surveillance systems in stores. So, like Bill said, if you're in a store and you stop and confront someone, I would not endorse that. I would encourage you, if you're in a store and you feel somebody's following you, I would go to the customer service. I would go to the checkout lanes where you know there are cameras, and I would tell somebody, I feel very uncomfortable, or, could you call the police? People call the police for a lot of things. I mean, and sometimes what's frustrating for us is somebody will dial 911 and say, hey, what time's the parade start tonight? And I'm not joking. And then others who may felt that their safety was in jeopardy don't want to bother us. I didn't want to bother you. I know you got better things to do. I can tell you there's no police officer out there that would feel good about you not making that call if you weren't safe. So for me, I think I try to avoid that conflict. And in this day and age, I'll kind of compare it to like a road rage incident on the highways. If you turn and snap a photo of me, or let's say it happened to be Bill walking by, or a person that is maybe have some ill intent, you're more likely to get yourself in a confrontation or something happen. I would just get yourself to a place that's well lit, that there's people. Now, given that being said, and kids are very good with phones, I have to look at mine closely to push every button. It seems like my kids know every button without looking at it. If you could record, if you have a button that's very easy to capture, I know some of the phones now, you can activate your video, your camcorder, your pictures as you're walking, but I don't know that I would recommend actually stopping and turning and taking a picture of somebody. I think you're just asking for a confrontation.
You got it.
This next one refers back to the movie, and I don't have an answer for it, and I don't know that any of us here. This is the first time I saw the movie as well, but it asks, or actually more of a statement, please tell me that Robert Money from the film is no longer breathing. I don't have an answer for that one. This one is actually going to be geared toward, this is the best question, and I asked this before we even saw the movie, and it's regarding our guest on the far left. What can we do for Florentia? Well, I think, and I don't have an immediate answer. Her and I talked about that a little bit. I know Kelly's going to be chatting with her and trying to get her some assistance, and I would also say Lori is probably going to help out on that a little bit. So I'd say if you want to help, and I would strongly encourage you, if you have the ability to help in any way possible, contact Kelly or Lori after our discussion here, or pass the note up. And we'll make sure that it gets to one of the two there to help out, because she is in need of a lot of different types of help, and whatever we can do to help her out, I think we owe her that. So, what are some signs to watch for? I'm going to actually push this down over here and let her start, and then we'll work it back this way.
All right. Signs to watch for, I guess it really depends on what you're watching for. If we're thinking about sex trafficking and you're talking about teenagers, again, you want to be looking at their phones. I will admit that I also have to ask my kids to open stuff on the phones, because I'm like, I have no idea what I'm looking at here. But opening those conversations with your kids, getting them to show you what they're doing online, who their friends are online, looking at that stuff. And if you see something sketchy, to be questioning that further and possibly contacting the police to say, hey, this is what I found on that phone. Other things you want to watch for is relationships that are unhealthy. And that doesn't necessarily have to be romantic, but it could be romantic. As the one person in the movie did say that I think they call them boyfriending in. So somebody who's going to pretend to be their romantic partner, and is all of a sudden they're going to get all these expensive gifts and all this attention and all this, time and whatnot. Question that. Where does this person get all their money from? Is this a much older person? And another thing to think about, again, is those other females who will also recruit females. So do they all of a sudden have a female friend who has a lot of money and is investing a lot of attention and time into that teenager? Because again, that seems like an odd thing. So anytime you're getting those feelings of, that's strange, be questioning that. Trust your gut. Look into those things. Another thing that we often say to look for is those kids who are truant a lot. They may be in school a couple of days and then they're gone a few days, and then they come back for a couple of days and then they're gone for a week, and then they come back again and then they're gone again. That's definitely a red flag to be trying to find out, why are those kids gone so often? Are they being forced into prostitution? Are they being lured into some other type of activity? Or are they just home babysitting a sick sibling and mom and dad had to go to work? You never really know until you start asking more questions and you start looking into that more and trying to find out what's the story behind all of that. Again, drug use, as Captain Greenwalt said, is very, very common among individuals who are trapped into sex trafficking. So if all of a sudden a child or an adult is starting to use drugs, look into that more. Ask more of those questions.
I think Kelly covered a lot of the things to look for, but I guess one of the things I would tell you is watch for changes. Any type of changes in day-to-day routines, changes in friends. If you've got a child that consistently maybe participates in some after-school event or socializes with certain people that you've never had a question, and all of a sudden they're now with a whole different group of people and they're not home on time when they should be, just look for those changes in behavior and patterns, and don't ignore them. Even though your child might say, I'm going up to my room and closing the door, and you think, I'll just leave them alone, they really want you to ask them. They really want you to come up and help them. And the worst thing you can do is ignore those signs. So if you just see any type of change in behavior, daily routines, don't be afraid to. Now again, kids are going to have bad days like we as adults do. And I'm not saying because they come home and take the day off and take the night off from playing that you need to go and think that there's something wrong. But I'm talking about consistent change in their friends, their patterns. Don't just let it go. At least look into it and see what's causing that.
Yeah, I wanted to throw one other story in there real quick. We had one victim that was being trafficked while she stayed at home. Now think about this for a minute. And that's why everything they said is perfect. It can happen in your own house without you, as a parent, you sometimes may not even know about it. But watching for the signs that were just mentioned is a great way. And I say that there was a young lady that was trafficked, and she would still go to school in the daytime. Her grades started slipping, obviously, but at night when the parents went to sleep, she would sneak out and go out with the pimp and work for him all night long to be brought back home in the morning and go back to school like nothing ever happened. You say, how did that happen? Well, sleeping in that same room next to her was another young lady, a couple of years younger, her sister. And the pimp threatened her that if you ever tell him what you're doing, I will kill your sister. Now think about that for a minute. That girl, the last thing she ever wanted to see ever happen was to have her sister killed, so she did what she was told. So, great signs to look for, and there's probably even more, but next question, and I'm going to go back to you on this one. How do we stop the demand? I kind of hit on some of that early on, but this has been the question that's been in existence for 2,200 years, so money.
Well, I think that we have to start with a culture shift in general. We have to start seeing that women are not sex objects and that sex is not something we can buy. So if you look at our media, you look at advertisements, sex sells, doesn't it? So as long as we allow media and we buy the media, we buy those objects that are being advertised using sex to sell it, we're feeding into that demand. We're part of that demand. As long as people go to strip clubs, as long as people buy pornography, which if you're over 18, that's legal. As long as people continue to buy that, we have demand. So until we have an actual culture shift that says, hey, sex is not something we buy, people are not objects that we can purchase, we're going to have that demand. So it's going to take not just women, but it takes men as well, and people working together to say, you know what, we value people, for who they are as a whole, and we don't just value this set of people for what I can get out of them, and this set of people for the sex that we can get from them. But we need to start actually valuing human beings as human beings and respecting each other. And we need to teach children from young on that we don't buy sex, that it's just not the way our culture is going to be. So it needs to be an entire culture shift, and that is going to take every single person all across the culture to change that and teach respect for sexuality, respect for our fellow human beings, whether they are male or female.
One bit of housekeeping real quick. I understand that we're out of these cards, so if you aren't using one, please pass it down your aisle so maybe that somebody who didn't get one can fill it out if they so desire. Also, if you have a card that you would like to turn it in, so we can try to answer your questions, just raise it up, and we do have a couple people out there that will come around and pick it up and bring it up to us. So if you could do either one of those, that would be awesome. So thank you. this was gonna go back to you, Kelly, because this is regarding treatment, and I apologize if I don't read handwriting too well, but what and where are treatment, I'm gonna assume facilities, but I do think it's also regarding our guest on the far left, and like you said, we're gonna talk about that a little bit, or with her a little bit later, but treatment facilities, Kelly's working for one of the best ones around, so we'll let her talk about it.
Well, as far as treatment facilities, we don't have like a space that we have just human trafficking survivors. What we see is, again, people are whole people. They are not just a human trafficking survivor. So what we do is we will advocate for survivors, and in that we do a lot of referrals to other places for mental health treatment, substance abuse treatment. We utilize shelters, and then we utilize like the rapid rehousing service that she's using to try and get people into a more permanent place to live. So we utilize all those things that are already in our community, whether that's food pantries, clothing options, things like that. But what we do is we are kind of that centralized place where people will get that moral support they need, that emotional support that they need to help them through the process and to help them find those doors that we need to open to make sure all of their needs are met. Now, there are about 3 houses here in Iowa that do take specifically sex trafficking survivors. And within those houses, they usually have 4 or 5 people who live there for a period of time. And then they also do pretty much the same work that we do, only we don't provide a house like that. Our viewpoint on that is that any one of us here probably doesn't want to share a house with 5 other strangers that are sitting next to us here. We think that people want to be independent, people want to have their own space, so we try to allow people to do that rather than try to group people into a house with a bunch of other people that they've never met before and then hope for the best. So there are those places out there. We just generally refer to other community agencies in the area.
One thing that I would add to that is, as a police officer, and I think Bill and Kelly in the audience can tell you, sometimes, police officers, when we write tickets, we're not the most popular. But I will tell you, there are times at night, and when we hear about treatment, we funding across the state, across the country, we've lost these facilities that would house victims of whether it's sex trafficking, domestic violence, anything along those lines. And I will tell you, having worked many, many, many night shifts, it's very, very frustrating to deal with a victim of sexual assault, human trafficking, domestic violence, and knowing that they have no place to go, and you go home at the end of your shift and you're hoping and praying that that person you talked to at 2 o'clock in the morning that was just at the worst point of their life has a place to go. And we need to be very, very thankful for what Kelly and her group of employees do. And always, I would encourage, as a police officer, always support any facility out there that's offering treatment. And the worst thing we can do is cut those down and not have homes and shelters for people that are victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and trafficking.
We're gonna try to wrap this up in 15 minutes, I believe. So I'm gonna try to get all these questions out and get some of these answered as best as we can up here. And this one's not going to be in my league to answer either, so I'm going to pass this on to either one of you two. But can you inform everyone about a bad app to look for on kids' phones? Kick app is like Match.com for teens and predators.
I'll tell you, you'd almost have to have a degree in apps nowadays and study it full time. I will tell you that I think I'm 47 years old, and I think I'm behind the times in what I see my kids are on their phones. They're coming back, and every day that we think that we master the first, I just finally mastered Facebook, and now there's 5 new ones, and I'm really struggling. Kick is one that I've heard. Certainly Backpage, and that's not necessarily an application, but it could be a website that was visited, or luckily there's been some changes in that. But it's really tough, and I would tell you, unfortunately Google can answer a lot of questions, and that might be a question. If I had a computer in front of me, name the top 5 bad apps that our kids should not have, and we might find a better answer than unfortunately what I'm able to give you tonight. All I can tell you is just stay on top of what your kids are doing, and hopefully they don't get those bad apps.
I would say if it's an app, it's bad. If somebody can contact your kid somehow through that app, it's a dangerous app for your kid to have. because that allows somebody to reach them, whether it's Facebook or Kik or Messenger, or another thing that people don't think about is the online dating apps. I mean, once somebody turns 18 or they put in there that they're 18, traffickers are all over online dating because, hey, those are people looking for love. So pretty much if there's an app out there that allows people to talk to you or talk to your kid, that's a dangerous app to have. So again, be very aware what the conversations are having, what is going on that phone, because I can't give you a list of 5 apps because there's how many thousands of them out there. Traffickers are going to use whatever they can find, and they know exactly what kids are on. So any app that your kid is on, that's a dangerous app to have.
And I would just say, if you don't know what it is, ask your child what it is. Let them explain to you what it is, and make them show you what pops up when you open it on their phone.
We have 3 cards here that are very similar, and I know many of you out there obviously are asking the same question. So I'm going to have or Chief Greenwalt answer this one. What's going on with the Facebook about Home Depot, Walmart, Hobby Lobby?
Okay, I'm pretty confident that question was coming tonight. And, I appreciate that promotion, but just Assistant Chief, I'm not the Chief. Chief Tyrion just had a commitment tonight, so wasn't able to be here. But I will tell you that when we talk about we want things to be reported, as I mentioned early, it's very, very important. Social media is a great tool. Social media allows us as a police department, when Chief Tyrion got here, one of the first things he said is, why do we not have a social media interaction with the community? The community can reach out to us without dialing 911 and share information with us. And we didn't have an answer for him. So that was one of the first things that he implemented. Then we had to find somebody that could commit a lot of time to keep in touch with the people on social media. And I like to say social media is our friend, but sometimes it's things spread very, very fast. But with regards to those 3 incidents, I can tell you I spend a lot of time on social media. The chief encourages me to keep track of what's going on the scanner pages, watch for trends. We kind of use it to get the pulse of the community, good, bad, or indifferent. It guides us in what we should be doing, what we need to be doing, and what some of the feelings of the community are. However, we also know that sometimes things tend to spread very, very fast. Some things could be spot on, and oftentimes things get, I don't want to say exaggerated, but they might get, the truth might be built on it a little bit. So we actually have spent a lot of time from the initial post, and I could tell you as a police department, from the first day that we saw a post that there was some sort of alleged activity going on out at Walmart, we knew about it. From our officers that read that, to our investigators, it made it to the chief within probably the day. And we have taken times, the chief mandated some extra patrols out there, which can do 2 things. Number 1, it could tell the community, oh, there must be a problem, the police are out here. But in return, we also want people to feel safe, and we don't not want them to shop at our stores. But in looking at all 3 of those, and I don't want to go into all of them, the first one, and I should pull up my phone, I have to get my cheaters on and blow it up by about 1,000 times to read it. We did release tonight, right before this at about 5:30, I think tonight, we released an updated statement via our social media, our Facebook post, that outlined those 3 incidents. And I could tell you, officers responded to Walmart on, I believe it was the 9th, don't quote me on the date, I have to go back and look at my notes, because there was some concern. There was a report that a gentleman asked somebody for a ride. At that point, we had no reason to be in fear of that being a criminal act. The officers responded, we identified the person, we confirmed what was said, but it wasn't a crime. And we have to, as police officers, have to be very careful that we don't accuse people of a crime if they haven't committed a crime. And I know that's, again, you guys are giving me some tough ones, and there's no definitive answers tonight on some of the questions that you posed to me. It's kind of like that pepper spray thing. We want to look into everything. And I think what I want to summarize here, we met with management of one of the other ones I think was allegedly something that took place at Jewel Osco. We met with management. We reviewed videos. I believe a word that was used was like a kidnapping. I could tell you that was far from the case. And if you haven't, or you're not part of our social media Facebook friend, I would encourage you to become it, because we released it tonight, and I think tomorrow I will make sure I send out a media release that basically carbons that. These issues, again, I don't believe, although they rose some suspicions, and rightfully so, we got to be careful to, when we cross that line, to say suspicions are criminal acts. And what's really important to us, and I think the biggest thing of these most recent issues that Hobby Lobby, we've talked with the person that made a report or made a social media posting regarding that. And again, I don't think they have ill intent to say, because somebody did this, a crime occurred, but we need to know that as a police department. We want that information to come in, and again, if we don't know it and we don't have that information, it can as people say, it can go viral, and people are going to add to it what they want. I'm fairly confident we did the right thing, the chief made the right actions, and we worked diligently on that to ensure that nobody's safety is in jeopardy at any of those places. And again, we'll move that social media post that we let out today at, I think it was about 5:30 tomorrow in a media release. But if you want to see it tonight, it kind of explains each one of those, and I don't want to take the next 5 minutes explaining each one.
I'm gonna run 4 questions up here into one, and then we'll come back your way, because like he said, he doesn't have all the answers for the hard ones, and I learned as a lieutenant to delegate, so I'm going to pass it. This is actually these are actually excellent questions, and here's one that says, how do I advise my teen? And there was some that says, how do I advise my daughter, granddaughter? But there was another one I'm going to, yes, boys and guys can be victims too. So this is going to wrap into the same one. How do I advise my child? How do I teach my child to stay safe, and how can we equip them to protect themselves better? Excellent question.
You giving me that one?
I'm passing it to you.
All right. And I think, again, it goes back to that communication. One of my frustrations with my children are they could be 50 feet away from their friend and they're text messaging or Snapchatting their friends. It's all about communications. We have to know what our kids are doing. And I was trying to listen to that whole question. I think, let's take a peek at it.
How do we keep our kids safe and protect them?
Yeah, how do we keep our kids safe? First and foremost, you have to know what your children are doing. I could tell you, growing up, I thought I knew everything, and my dad thought differently, and he and I discussed that many times, and some of the, I want to say, discipline that, spent some afternoons in the house when my friends were out playing that I thought was horrible, but in return, it didn't make me a bad person today. To keep your kids safe, you have to know what they're doing. You have to know where they're at. You have to know who they're with. You have to set some boundaries. I just talked to a gentleman yesterday, and he came in and he asked me some questions and caught me off guard on a few of them, and that's some of the things that he said to me is, do you know where your children are at? Do you know what they're doing? And it's really, really important. And again, these phones, our children nowadays live on those phones. I know you've heard me harp about this, but so much happens on that phone, that social media. You got to know what they're doing. You have to take the time to communicate with them. I try every day when I come home from work, and some days it's not so early. I always try to find a few minutes to talk to my daughters. I got one off in college now, and technology is great because we FaceTime every other night, and I make sure that she's home safe in her dorm, that things are going good for her, but it's all about communications. And don't just walk in and expect the child's going to tell you everything just because you walk in. You got to be a little bit patient with them. And sometimes, kids, push our buttons and they think they know everything. But you may have to listen. One of my supervisors, and I'm sure over the years Bill heard the same thing, is anybody can talk. Anybody up here could come up and say things tonight. But a great skill is listening. Sit back and let them talk. Let them open your ears and let them tell you what's going on in their lives. They may not come out and tell you exactly what they're doing, but listen for the clues that they're trying to tell you, the signals, the emotions that they're showing, and read them, and then take the time to talk to them. Don't judge them right away. Don't come down on them like a ton of bricks. Listen to them and try and get what they're telling you and communicate with them. That's, I think, in society today, is one of my concerns is communication. There's a breakdown in communications.
I'm going to basically agree with that. You just really need to be open and talking about, whatever it is happening in that kid's world, whatever that kid wants to talk about. If they want to talk about Pokemon, well, I guess you're going to talk about Pokemon tonight. I don't know a thing about Pokemon, but by gosh, I'm going to listen to it. Because you can always listen, like you said. You don't always have to be the one doing the talking. But also making sure that our children are learning healthy boundaries and about healthy sexuality. Not being afraid to say, hey, let's talk about sexuality. Because I think that's a big thing that parents are terribly uncomfortable talking to their children about. Well, if you don't talk to your kids about that, their friends are going to talk to them about that. The other people online are going to talk to them about that, and you certainly don't want a trafficker talking to them about that, or somebody else who in any other way wants to exploit them or harm them. So we can't be afraid to actually say the word sex to our children. We have to have those conversations. And yeah, you don't necessarily have to start that conversation with the word sex when they're 5 years old, but having those conversations about healthy boundaries and good touch, bad touch, and who are safe people that they can talk to, and making sure your children can identify safe people they can talk to that might not be you. Maybe it is the aunt, like that one guy, his daughter was out there, she was afraid to call dad because she was afraid of all the shame, and she was like, oh, he's gonna be mad, but she knew she could call her aunt. So making sure that your children know that they have more than just mom and dad, because let me tell you, I wouldn't want to call my mom and dad and tell them something bad, but I could call my grandma or my aunt or somebody else, and that'd be a whole lot easier. So making sure your children know that they have a whole community of people that they can get assistance from. And then again, keeping those lines of communication open, not just for you, but for other people as well, and not being afraid to teach our kids about healthy sexuality.
This is going to be kind of our last question, and then I'm going to make some closing remarks, and you guys feel free to do so as well. Are kids typically abducted for human trafficking, or are they brought into trafficking through relationships? And I would say yes, both, and far more. Would you like to
Sure.
touch on that?
Sure. What we have seen locally here is it's mostly relationships. It is mostly people who are grooming kids, whether it's online or it's grooming kids at school, grooming kids at places where kids hang out, wherever that might be in the community. But what sometimes happens then, once that grooming begins and you have that relationship, some of those kids do get abducted. Absolutely. It doesn't generally happen that somebody just grabs somebody off the street and there they go. There's usually a process beforehand that gains the trust. Again, like one of the ladies in the movie who had said, they talked online and then he bought her those tickets to Vegas. She thought she was going to go out there for this great job. Was she abducted? Yeah, technically in the end she was abducted, but it started off as a relationship. I think it's pretty rare that you have some stranger just come up and abduct a kid off the street and leave. I mean, obviously that gets the media's attention real quick. Traffickers are smarter than that. They're going to get that person to trust them so that there isn't a huge media uproar the minute that person goes missing, because that person may have said, hey, I'm going to go on a vacation, I'm going to go on a trip, so nobody's really expecting that person to return home necessarily that evening.
You want to go ahead and close? I'll
Yeah.
make some in a minute here
Yep.
too.
Well, I guess I'll just leave it tonight. It was great to come out and see this many people turn out tonight. And I think there were a lot of concerns, tonight. I know we didn't get to it towards the end about some of the recent social media posts about what's going on in our community. And I'm very glad that people have responded on Facebook. I'm very glad that this turnout was here tonight, because it shows that we've got a great community. We've got people that care. We've got parents that care. We've got grandparents that care. We've got friends that care. And it's great. Sometimes I go to presentations and I might have 5 people in the audience. I didn't do a count tonight. I'm sure somebody did. But there's, I'm guessing 150 people here tonight, which sends a great message that we have a great community. Having been a police officer here for 26 years, I can tell you, and I always tell people, they said, well, how dangerous? I saw a post, don't let your, I wouldn't walk the streets of Clinton. Well, I would tell you I have a 13-year-old daughter. And as a police officer, when somebody says, well, is this a bad city? Now, I would never encourage anybody to let their child walk down a dark alley at midnight, but there's really literally no place. If my daughter says, Dad, can I go to such and such's house? I have never yet to say to my daughter, no, they live in this neighborhood. No, things happen. No community is protected so much that crime doesn't happen, but I feel that we live in a great community. I think that I can tell you as a police officer, when I let my daughter go places without fear, and I tell them, make good choices, let me know where you're at, and obviously don't go into bad, Don't go down and leave the friend's house at midnight and walk in an alley. Don't go areas that you have no idea where there's nobody at. That's just asking for trouble in any community. But you know, when I walk away tonight, just the fact that you guys sat here tonight, guys and gals sat here, young and old, and listened to this, what we had to say, means the world to the police department. And the last thing I'd say is don't be afraid to call us. We want that information. We want to get, if there's something going on out there, we want to get ahead of it. The worst thing that can happen is let something go on, hope we maybe know about it or assume we maybe know about it, and not report it to us. You know, sometimes people get frustrated, we may be a little slow to get places, but we triage things, and I can tell you, for the most part, we try to get every single thing accomplished. It may just take us a little time, but without everybody in this audience, everybody in this community, like I think Bill talked about earlier, the movie may have talked about, this isn't a police job only. It's a community. It's together, we work together to solve problems. I may have the badge and the gun and have some extra training, but I can't, nothing I do is successful without, nothing anybody at that police department, nothing that Chief Jurian can do is successful unless we have everybody helping us. So thank you very, very much tonight for coming out and taking the time, and appreciate all the positive comments. And again, if we didn't answer something tonight that you have a question or you didn't feel comfortable asking that question tonight, I generally am in the office every day. Please, my email's on our website. Email me, stop and see me, call me. Any of the command staff, any of the officers, will be more than glad to answer any questions that you have, and thanks again.
And again, also, thank you. This was an amazing turnout. I just want to remind people that there are services available to trafficking survivors. Tonight's the first night I've met Florentia. We will certainly be working with her to assist her. And if anybody has any ideas of how they would like to assist her, certainly contact Lori at the Franciscan Peace Center or myself, and we will be sure to assist her with that. I think she will quickly feel the love of the Clinton community. That's my guess, based on what people are thinking out there, I'm guessing. So we can certainly make her story have a happy ending as well with all of your help. So thank you.
Would you like to say anything? And I'd like to thank everybody as well. I really liked getting involved with this topic when I moved here from Arizona. It actually helps me because I will tell you what, and you saw it in some of the eyes of the detectives that work this, it's things that you can't forget, and the more you can help, the better it is. I think one thing I want to let everybody know here, and I'm going to steal that phrase again, if you see something, say something. If you think about how many police officers we have, what are there, 37, 38?
42.
42. But there's 100 people in here. Times that by 2, look how many eyes we have in here. That's what helps the community. And it's kind of like, be careful what you ask for. The phone lines are going to be packed here later tonight and tomorrow. But you know what? It's better to have too much information than not enough information. So I would also like to say thank you all. This is the first step right here. This educating the community, and then having you, if you want more information, I know the Franciscans are more than willing to help out. I've been helping, or hopefully I've been helping with them for the last couple of years. There's a lot of great things going on right now. It's been really, we actually worked a lot harder through the holidays than I thought we were going to get stuff ready for this month, which is Human Trafficking Awareness Month. But there's a lot of things going on, and there's a lot of different subcommittees that you can get involved with. And if you want training, I guarantee you we will find a way to get it to you, either through Kelly and her organization, or with Lori and the Franciscan Peace Center. Here's one thing to take with you, if you want to check it out, is ClintonFranciscans.com. Please go to that website and check it out. I know they have a Facebook page that they post a lot of stuff on. If you see something, say something. If you have an organization or business that you're involved with that you would like to see, and there is no business or organization that can be immune from not helping or seeing in any given way, please make that phone call, and we'll definitely get somebody to send out your way to help you out. Thank you all, and I'd like to thank our special guest at the very end, Florentia. We're going to help her out, and let's give her a hand. I tell you hard.
Thank you. Please help me thank all of our panelists. We had a great conversation tonight.